So for lesson 3.3, I'm on page 178, and I usually skip this first thing at the beginning of each section, but this one is particularly helpful, so I want you to take a look at it because there's a little trick that you need to know when we are multiplying or dividing, solve an inequality. I'd like you, using 4 is greater than 1, fill in this chart. Just quick, write it down in your notebook and figure out in each box, what do you need, a greater than sign or a less than sign? Then you'll check yours with mine and we'll see if we can figure out the rule that they want you to learn. So the chart at the top of page 178 in the blue box asks you to consider the inequality 4 is greater than 1, which we all know is true. But then they ask you to manipulate it a little bit. If you multiply each side by positive 3, you end up with 12 and 3, so still greater than. Multiply by 2, what do you get? 8 and 2, still greater than. Multiply by 1, 4 and 1, still greater than. You're wondering why I'm making you do this. Well, now let's multiply by negative 1. We end up with negative 4 on this side and negative 1 on this side, which means the sign needs to go that way, because negative 4 is less than negative 1. What happens with negative 2? Negative 8 is less than negative 2, and negative 12 is less than negative 3. So what was the purpose of this exercise? When you are working with an inequality, when you multiply or divide both sides by a negative, you have to flip your inequality. And that's what we're going to practice in this chapter. So they explain it all out on page 178 in this key concept, multiplication property of inequality. You can take a look at that at your own pace. And then they continue with an explanation on the top of page 179. Here's why it works. Basically, that's what we did with the blue box on the other page. Then we get to problem 1, multiplying by a positive number. Now, here's what I expect for the rest of this video. These skills are very similar to what you already learned with equations. So if you want to work through them slowly with me, keep the video rolling. If you are very comfortable with these ideas and you just want to do the problems, see the answers, then skip ahead a little bit in the video. Okay, what are the solutions of x over 3 is less than negative 2, and graph it? Well, we know that to isolate the x, we're going to have to multiply each side by 3. It's positive 3, so we don't have to worry about changing this. Those 3's cancel out. We end up with x on this side. We end up with 3 times negative 2, which is negative 6 on this side. And here's our graph. Open circle at negative 6, moving to the left, because x needs to be less than that. Got it, number 1. Go ahead and put it in your notebook. What are the solutions of c over 8 is greater than 1/4? Write it out. Let's go over it together. So, problem 1. C over 8 greater than 1/4. I probably should have written out one more step than I did, but basically you're going to clear these fractions. So you're going to multiply each side by 8, you're going to multiply each side by 4, and what you're going to end up with is 4 times c is greater than 8. Divide by 4, it's positive, so you don't have to worry about changing the greater than. You end up with c is greater than 2. Go ahead and graph it. Open circle at 2, your colored line moving off to the right. And then check it. Pick any number that's greater than 2. So problem 2 on the bottom of page 179 is where we really get into working with negative numbers. Here's our original problem, negative 3/4 w greater than or equal to 3. To clear this fraction, you're going to multiply by negative 4/3, and in doing that, this switches from a greater than or equal to sign to a less than or equal to sign. And then your solution, w less than or equal to negative 4, and your graph. Move on to problem 2 on page 180. So problem 2, I should call it got it 2. Negative n over 3 is less than negative 1. Well, to get rid of that fraction, I'm going to multiply by negative 3 over 1, which means that my sign flips and is greater than 3. Graph it right there, and then check your answers. I chose 5 because I like 5. If n is equal to 5, does this work? Well, negative 5/3 less than negative 1. Yes, that is true. So 5 works. What happens if I choose a really big number? And you only have to check this once. I'm just picking a couple numbers to try and make it more clear to you. If n equals 100, negative 100/3 is less than negative 1? Yep, it sure is. Let's move on to problem 3. So I'm looking at the middle of page 180. They go over the division property of inequality. This is exactly the same as it was for equations. Anything you do to one side, you must do to the other. And if it's a negative number, you have to flip the sign. That's all this is saying. So, problem 3, dividing by a positive number. And they're trying to give you a real-life example. I'm going to let you read over this on your own. Moving on to got it, number 3. Letter A is an actual problem. Letter B is thinking, not a solving. So, pull your notebooks out. Let's get this written down, see what we can find. So they've given you a problem where you can buy a case for $10.68 and you have $50 or less to spend. So I made C my variable for case, and I just set this up. 10.68 times C has to be less than or equal to 50. So I pull out my calculator, I end up with C is less than or equal to 4.68. But can you buy 4.68 cases of anything? No, not really. And can you buy negative cases? No, you can't. So really, you can only buy 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 cases. Then for letter B, they want you to take a look at, similarly to the question I just asked you about how many cases can you buy. Does your answer of 16 2/3 dogs make sense up here? Well, no. If you're going to have to walk 16 2/3 dogs to earn the money you want to earn, you better round up to 17. Otherwise, I think the dog that you cut into thirds will be pretty upset with you. Problem 4 gives us a little bit of practice dividing by a negative number. You can look through those steps. I'm going to walk you through got it number 4. Put this problem in your notebook and let's do it together. So here's the problem they give us. First step we need to do is divide each side by negative 5. But if we have to divide by a negative, we need to flip the sign. So x is less than 2. And here's your graph. That was not so bad. All done. Also, please do the lesson check on page 181. That's it for this lesson.